From Taiwan towards what's transpiring in Europe. We're now learning that at least 3 people have been killed and 5 injured in a deadly blast at the Avangard explosives plant in Sterlitamak in Bashkortostan. The regional governor, Vredi Kabirov, has stated that forensic experts are investigating the cause. He's denied Ukrainian drones were involved in the same. Emergency services, meanwhile, have completed search and rescue operations throughout the night. The Avangard plant makes industrial explosives and dismantles ammunitions as well. It's been controlled by Russia's Rostec since 2022. Now, investigators are working at the same time to determine exactly what caused this particular blast. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Ross Feingor. We're seeing a barrage of attacks continuing on the ground between Russia and Ukraine, even as Donald Trump has just concluded his meetings with Zelensky. This escalation has in fact been increasingly seen after the Alaska summit that took place between Trump and Putin earlier. Energy infrastructure in particular has been targeted by both sides. There's also a lot of talk about Trump and Putin meeting in Budapest. Do you think these talks will really yield anything? Would they help in diffusing the tensions, or would it result in a sort of repetition of what we've seen in the aftermath of what transpired in Alaska?
We simply don't know the answer to that question, but I think the important thing here is that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, continues this effort. He continues to put his own time and the resources of the United States government into trying to find a way to reach either a ceasefire or some kind of long-term peace arrangement. And we know what the parameters are, and frankly, President Trump reiterated that on Friday, U.S. time, which is basically to freeze the current front line where it is. Now, that's extremely difficult for Ukraine to accept because it would mean that part of their territory, approximately or nearly 20% of their country, is going to be occupied by Russia with really no conclusion, no termination of that occupation in sight or on offer at all. So we don't know what the outcome of any of these talks will be, but I think it's good that they're happening. You know, the other approach would be to say no talks and Ukraine, you just keep trying to fight, but that's not the policy of the Trump administration. So some people want to criticize the president, but his policy is very clear, which is he's going to try and bring the two sides together into some kind of ceasefire arrangement.
Indeed, and we've recently seen statements being put out by Zelensky. He's pointed to the landmark deal in the Middle East. He said that the same approach that helped curb conflict in the Middle East could be applied here as well. But considering the geopolitical ground realities, the fact that Russia is a nuclear armed power, it has one of the strongest militaries in the world, could a similar approach really be applicable here too?
Difficult. There are certainly some similarities. For example, international donors are going to spend a lot of money to rebuild Gaza, and it'll take international donors to rebuild parts of Ukraine. There's talk of some kind of stabilization force of soldiers or police officers from different countries going on the ground in Gaza. There's been talk about that in Ukraine as well. Russia has objected to that, but eventually Russia might give in depending on which countries are part of the force and what its actual mandate is. So those are similarities, but where there's a significant difference at the moment was Israel was willing to withdraw significantly from most of Gaza, although they insist on keeping, if the deal is implemented in full, which really we don't know for sure if it will be at the moment, but if it is, Israel has agreed to withdraw from most of Gaza other than a limited security zone that is within the borders of Gaza. It's not within the borders of Israel. So Israel still anticipates occupying part of Gaza going forward. But the big difference here is Russia at the moment they're not saying that they're willing to withdraw from the territory of Ukraine that they occupy. And President Trump is not insisting on that. He's basically saying that Ukraine should accept where the front line is, which would mean Ukraine accepting that part of its territory is occupied by Russia. So that is a significant difference from the two situations.
All right, so requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking further developments. We're now learning that at least 2 people have been killed in a Ukrainian drone attack on a Russia-controlled part of the Kherson region in southern Ukraine. The governor, Vladimir Saldo, has informed this via his Telegram channel. Both victims lived in a temporary accommodation center for evacuees, which was hit by the latest Ukrainian drone strike in Russian-controlled areas of Kherson. Russian authorities have previously also stated that 61 drones have been intercepted by their air defenses today. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Avangard. Even as these developments are taking place, reports are coming in that Trump has denied the sale of Tomahawks to Ukraine. Of course, these are yet to be verified by the US administration, but this is what the murmur is on the ground. We'd also recently seen a statement by Donald Trump to the media where rather publicly he's come out and stated that the United States cannot deplete its own stocks of the Tomahawks. This is in the aftermath of his phone call with Putin and also in the aftermath of some rather strong statements we're seeing from Kremlin. What sort of message is then Trump giving not just to Zelensky, but to Europe at large?
I think Trump is being consistent. I mean, going into the presidential campaign last year and after he won, he was always skeptical of providing more weapons to Ukraine. He thought that the best way to bring about an end to the war was through negotiations and not adding more weapons to the conflict. And he's been consistent, and that's been his position after he took office as well. Now, as his frustration with Putin grew over the course of this year, he was willing to agree with the Europeans that they could purchase U.S. weapons and give those weapons to Ukraine, but he certainly put a stop to U.S. Giving any weapons to Ukraine. So his statements yesterday about not giving Tomahawks or selling Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, it's really not a surprise. President Trump, he clearly still prefers to find a way to negotiate some kind of ceasefire. And, he's coming off a high. He had his success in Gaza, as well as with the other conflicts that he's helped resolve, as he often reminds us. And he feels that he's on a high, and he's on a streak where he could resolve conflict. So clearly his instinct is not to add more weapons to the situation. It's to try and negotiate a settlement. And although Zelensky mostly said the right things when he was at the White House or spoke with reporters on Friday, clearly this is frustrating for Zelensky. Obviously, going into this meeting, Zelensky wanted President Trump to say, sure, I will let Europe buy those Tomahawks and give them to you. And President Trump has said no for now.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time, sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus away from Europe to Latin America. We're now learning that violent protests erupted in Colombia's capital city, Bogota, as